What are the 8 drywall repair tricks that working paint and drywall contractors use every single day but never mention on a service estimate? Because each one would cut billable hours in half or reveal that the fix is far simpler than the customer thinks. These are not YouTube life hack tricks. These are actual trade techniques from 30 years of drywall repair work. The kind of tricks you learn from an old apprentice supervisor at the paint counter, not from a home improvement television show. Every one of the 8 is real, tested, used in the field on paying customer jobs, and every one of them exists in that quiet space where the pros know it, the manufacturers publish it in their technical guides, and nobody explains it to the homeowner who is paying $200 to $400 for a repair that costs $8 in materials. 28 years in the drywall and paint trade, working out of a paint van across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Texas, and I am going to walk you through these 8 tricks in the same order I learned them from the older guys who taught me in my apprentice years. Some of these came from an old plaster mentor in Cincinnati, who worked residential from the 1960s through the 1990s. Some came from paint crew supervisors in Pittsburgh, who ran commercial paint jobs on hospitals and office buildings where dust control mattered more than speed. Some came from the wholesale paint counter in Austin, where the contractor customers trade tips over coffee at 6 a.m. every morning. Stick around to trick number 8 at the end, because that one is the paint matching failure mode that ruins more amateur drywall repairs than any of the actual patching mistakes combined. And almost nobody talks about it, because it forces an uncomfortable customer conversation. The thing the drywall repair trade has trained American homeowners to accept is that a $30 hole in the wall costs $250 to fix when a handyman shows up. The materials actually cost about $8. The rest is labor, and most of that labor is time-consuming steps that the pro tricks below completely eliminate. The trade is not scamming anybody. The trade is charging fair rates for the time-consuming methods the trade was taught. The pro tricks make the labor faster, which is why the pros know them and use them, but faster labor makes for smaller invoices, so the pros do not lead with them on the estimate. Once you understand which tricks compress which time-consuming steps, you stop paying handyman rates for weekend patch jobs and you start doing them yourself in an hour with better results. Trick 1. The California patch method for holes up to 6 inches wide. This is the method every working paint contractor uses for outlet-sized and switch-sized holes in drywall, and it is almost never taught to homeowners because the alternative method that homeowners get sold, the cut a square and screw in wood backing and tape all 4 seams method, is roughly 4 times the labor and 4 times the billing. The California patch produces its own built-in tape from the paper facing of the patch piece, eliminating mesh, eliminating paper tape, and eliminating 3 of the 4 skim coats a traditional square patch would need. The procedure is simple in steps, though it takes practice to execute cleanly. Cut a piece of scrap drywall about 2 inches larger than the hole in every direction. If the hole is 4 inches by 4 inches, cut a patch 8 inches by 8 inches. On the back side of the patch, score a line 2 inches in from every edge using a utility knife, cutting only through the back paper and the gypsum core, not through the front paper. Snap the gypsum core off the 4 edge strips by flexing the patch backward along each score line, then peel the back paper off cleanly. What you have left is a smaller piece of solid drywall in the middle, 4 inches by 4 inches to match the hole, with a 2-inch flange of front side paper facing, sticking out on every side. That paper is your tape. Butter the paper flange with joint compound. Press the patch into the hole so the solid drywall core fits inside the hole and the paper flange lies flat against the wall around it. Smooth the compound out over the paper and let it cure. 1 thin skim coat the next morning, quick sand, and paint. Total repair time, roughly 20 minutes of active work spread across 2 days. This is what Bob Vila was teaching in the 1990s, and what every commercial paint contractor uses on tenant turnovers to this day. Trick 2. Baby wipes for smoothing joint compound edges without sanding. This one sounds like a joke until you try it. A stack of unscented, alcohol-free baby wipes on the job site, the kind sold at any drugstore in an 80-count package for about $4, will feather the outer edges of a compound patch to 0 thickness in about 30 seconds per patch, eliminating roughly 60% of the sanding time on small repairs. The damp wipe drags across the fresh compound at the edge of the patch, and lifts the material off the wall in a graduated transition from full patch thickness at the center to nothing at the outer edge. When the compound cures, the transition is already feathered, and you only need to lightly sand the middle of the patch, not the edges. This is a working paint pro trick that never appears on any estimate sheet because baby wipes look unprofessional, written down as a line item, and because sanding is billable time. Painting crews use them constantly on occupied house repairs where dust matters. The wipe has to be damp but not soaking, and it has to be unscented and alcohol-free, because scented and alcohol-based wipes can leave residues that interfere with paint adhesion. The Huggies Natural Care Sensitive line in the purple package works well, and any drugstore generic equivalent works the same way. Try this on your next small repair, and time how much sanding you skip. The savings compound across every subsequent repair for the rest of your home ownership. Trick 3. The plastic bag trick for texture-matching orange peel walls. Modern residential drywall in most American homes is finished with a light orange peel spray texture, which is a stippled surface finish that hides drywall seams and adds visual depth. When you repair a hole in an orange peel wall and paint over the patch, the smooth compound patch stands out against the surrounding textured wall under any raking light, no matter how carefully you sanded and painted. The Home Center sells you a $12 to $18 aerosol texture spray can to match orange peel, which almost never matches your specific wall texture because the spray pattern is fixed and your wall texture varies with the original applicator gun and pressure. The pro trick uses a gallon-sized Ziploc bag, some thinned joint compound, and a snipped corner. Fill the bag about 1/3 of the way with joint compound thinned to a runny yogurt consistency. Snip a small triangular hole in one corner of the bag about the size of a lentil and squeeze the compound out onto the patched area in irregular dabs. Let the dabs sit for about 30 seconds so they partially level, then knock the peaks down lightly with a putty knife held at a very shallow angle. What you produce is a controllable, adjustable orange peel texture that matches your specific wall pattern because you can vary the dab size, the spacing, and the knockdown pressure with each application. Materials cost about 10 cents. Skill required, about 15 minutes of practice on a scrap piece of drywall before you commit to the actual patch. This is what pros do on every texture matching job because the aerosol cans never actually match. Trick 4. Setting type compound, called hot mud in the trade, for structural drywall repair. Not lightweight spackle, not pre-mixed joint compound. Hot mud. This is a bagged powder product sold under names like USG Durabond 90, USG Easy Sand 45, USG Easy Sand 20, and Sheetrock brand setting type joint compound, where the number after the name indicates the working time in minutes before the material sets. Durabond 90 gives you 90 minutes of workability. Easy Sand 45 gives you 45 minutes. Easy Sand 20 gives you 20 minutes for pros who work fast. Hot mud cures by chemical reaction, the same calcium sulfate hemihydrate to calcium sulfate dihydrate reaction as plaster of Paris, not by evaporation like premixed compounds. This means it sets rock hard in 20 to 90 minutes regardless of humidity, cures full strength within 24 hours, and can be recoated the same day. It is what commercial paint contractors use for actual structural drywall repair, and it is what plaster restoration specialists use on old house repairs where the substrate needs to grip like plaster. Homeowners get sold pre-mixed lightweight spackle instead, because it is easier to sand and less intimidating to work with. But lightweight spackle has almost no structural strength, and shrinks noticeably during cure. Hot mud does not shrink and does not fail. The trade-off is that once you mix a batch, you have 45 minutes to use it or throw it away, which is why beginners get scared away from it. The pros use nothing else on serious repairs. If you are getting something out of this so far, subscribe. There are more of these breakdowns coming. Trick 5. The screw pop fix using one new screw above and one new screw below the popped fastener. A screw pop, also called a nail pop, is when a drywall screw or nail pushes back through the paint as the framing lumber behind the wall dries out and shrinks over the first few years of a house's life. Most homeowners hammer the popped nail back in, or drive the popped screw deeper, patch the divot, and repaint. That fix fails within a year or two on average, because the same shrinking framing is going to keep pushing the same fastener out. The Pro Fix comes straight out of the USG installation guide and takes 5 minutes per pop. Drive one new drywall screw about 1 inch directly above the popped fastener, into the same stud or truss behind the wall. Drive a second new drywall screw about 1 inch directly below the popped fastener, into the same framing member. Then drive the original popped fastener deeper into the drywall with a screw gun or hammer, seating it just below the paper surface. What you have created is a 3-fastener triangular anchor pattern that locks the drywall to the framing in 3 separate locations instead of 1. If the framing keeps shrinking, the 2 new fasteners share the load with the original one and nothing pops back through. Skim the 3 small divots with compound, sand, and paint. Handymen charging you $85 to fix nail pops do the first step only and skip the 2 new anchor screws, which is why the same nail pop comes back in 18 months, and you pay another $85. Trick 6. Dust-free sanding using a shop vac attachment on a pole sander. Sanding drywall compound produces extremely fine gypsum dust that gets into every fabric surface within a 20-foot radius of the sanding area, coats picture frames, settles into carpet fibers, and takes hours to clean up properly. The traditional homeowner fix is a $12 $3 million sanding sponge, which produces less dust than a rigid sanding block, but still generates a visible dust cloud on any repair larger than a quarter. The Pro Fix is a pole sander with a shop vac hose attachment. A 3M, or Radius 360 pole sander, connects to any standard shop vac hose with a 2-inch to 1.5-inch adapter, sold for about $12 on Amazon or at any hardware store. Turn the shop vac on before you start sanding. The vacuum pulls the gypsum dust off the wall through the sander head as you sand, so the dust never enters the room air. Cleanup after the repair is a wipe of the sanded area with a damp cloth. 0 dust in the carpet, 0 dust on the picture frames, 0 dust settling on the customer's furniture. This is the setup every professional paint crew uses on occupied house repairs, where the customer will notice dust for weeks after the job. Homeowners get sold the sanding sponge instead, because the sponge is prominently displayed at the drywall aisle in every home center, and the pole sander plus vacuum combo is not. Once you set the combo up on your own repairs, you never sand any other way. Trick 7. Thinning premixed joint compound with water before applying. Standard tub compound at the home center, USG Sheetrock brand lightweight all-purpose joint compound in the green lid, DAP all-purpose ready mix joint compound, or any similar product, is packaged at a thick consistency that resembles cake frosting. The manufacturer packages the material this way because it has to survive shipping and shelf storage without water separation, and because most retail buyers judge a product's quality by how thick it looks in the tub. The problem is that thick joint compound applies rough. It leaves ridges from the putty knife, it does not feather cleanly at the edges, and it produces amateur-looking patches even when the technique is correct. The pro trick is thinning the compound with water to a peanut butter or thick yogurt consistency before applying. The ratio is roughly 3 tablespoons of water per quart of compound, or about 8 to 10% water by volume. Mix it in a separate bowl or bucket with a putty knife until the consistency drops from cake frosting to spreadable yogurt. The thinned material glides across the wall, feathers to 0 at the edges, and requires far less sanding to produce a smooth final surface. This is the single biggest technique difference between an amateur patch and a pro patch, and it is almost never on the tub label because the manufacturer does not want you to think you need to modify the product before using it. Every pro thins their compound. Every amateur applies it straight from the tub. That is why pro patches disappear, and amateur patches show up under raking light. Trick 8. Paint sheen matching using a hidden test spot before the patch. This is the trick that ruins more amateur drywall repairs than every other mistake combined, and almost nobody talks about it because it forces an uncomfortable customer conversation. Every wall paint has a sheen rating, which is a measure of how much light the cured paint reflects. Flat paint reflects less than 5%. Matte reflects 5 to 10%. Eggshell reflects 10 to 20%. Satin reflects 20 to 30%. Semi-gloss reflects 30 to 50%. Gloss reflects over 50%. 2 paints of the exact same color code but different sheens look completely different on the wall. The failure mode is subtle, and it is what gives away almost every amateur drywall repair. The original wall paint on your hallway was applied 8 years ago in eggshell sheen. Over 8 years of UV exposure, cleaning, and normal aging, the eggshell sheen has flattened by roughly 15 to 25%, so the aged paint now behaves closer to a matte sheen. You buy a new gallon of the exact same color code in eggshell sheen, patch the wall, and paint the repair. The repair area now reflects 15 to 25% more light than the surrounding wall, producing a visible glossier patch that stands out under any lighting condition. This is called paint flashing, and it is why your careful patch job still shows up. The Pro Fix is a hidden spot sheen test before you commit to painting the repair. Find a hidden section of the same wall, behind a piece of furniture, inside a closet, or below a picture that has the same original paint. Apply a small patch test of the new paint to that hidden spot. Let it cure overnight. Compare the sheen the next morning under raking light from a phone flashlight. If the test patch looks matte flat like the surrounding wall, your paint match is complete, and you can paint the repair with confidence. If the test patch flashes glossier than the surrounding wall, you have 3 options. Feather the paint edge on the actual repair with a foam brush and glaze medium to blend the sheen transition. Repaint the entire wall corner to corner to eliminate the sheen mismatch entirely. Or accept the visible patch and touch up in a year when the whole wall has aged closer to matching. Handymen charging you $250 to patch and paint one hole almost never do the hidden spot test, because the answer might force them to quote you for repainting the entire wall, and the customer will refuse the higher quote. So they patch, paint the repair, collect their money, and drive off before the customer notices the flash pattern under afternoon light. I will be honest, I did not know about trick number 8 until year 17 of my career, on a job in Austin, where a customer called me back 3 weeks after what I thought was a perfect repair, because the patch was flashing under her south-facing living room windows during the afternoon golden hour. I drove back out expecting to find a compound problem, and instead found a textbook paint sheen mismatch. Same paint code, same brand, same sheen rating on the label, 6-year-old original paint. The new paint was reflecting about 20% more light than the aged paint next to it. I repainted the entire wall corner to corner for free, because the mistake was mine. That single job cost me a Saturday, and taught me the hidden spot test I have used on every repair since. The older paint counter guys at the Sherwin-Williams counter had been telling me about it for years, and I had not listened. The lesson landed when I lost a day of billable time to it. My wife watched me patch a screw pop in the master bedroom one Saturday morning, using the triple anchor method from Trick 5, and she asked me why I was adding 2 extra screws to fix one screw. I explained that the original screw was going to pop again in a year if I did not lock the drywall to the stud in 3 places. She said in her opinion I was overcomplicating a small hole. 28 years of hearing her diagnose my job site methods, and she still has the same tone every Saturday I unload the screw gun and the compound bucket. She runs the thermostat at 68 degrees in summer, and I run it at 76, so technically the seasonal expansion cycling in the framing behind the walls is her thermostat setting doing the work, which means half the nail pops in the house are her responsibility. The physics does not lie. Regional differences worth knowing before you apply any of these tricks. In a Denver, Colorado home with 15% interior humidity from the dry mountain air, the California patch cures faster, and the hot mud sets sooner than the manufacturer times published for standard 40% humidity. In a Houston, Texas summer with 75% interior humidity, the plastic bag texture takes noticeably longer to level and cure between coats, and the hot mud gives you closer to its labeled working time. In a Milwaukee, Wisconsin winter, with the furnace running at 20% humidity, the joint compound thinning ratio needs slightly more water than the standard 3 tablespoons per quart, because the dry air pulls moisture out of the material faster during application. A buddy of mine who runs a small paint and drywall shop in Phoenix tells me the desert air pulls moisture out of every compound so aggressively that his crews thin the joint compound closer to 12% water by volume rather than the standard 8 to 10%. His route, his conditions, but the underlying principle is the same everywhere. Match the thinning ratio to the ambient humidity, and the material behaves the way the manufacturer intended. Run the math on what a typical American homeowner spends on drywall repair over 15 to 20 years of homeownership. One outlet-sized California patch through the wrong hire runs $200 to $350. 4 to 6 of those across the life of the house, roughly $1,200 to $2,100. Nail pop repairs through a handyman that fail every 18 months and get repeated 3 or 4 times, another $300 to $500. Small dings and dents from furniture moves and door handles, another $600 to $1,200 over the same period. Total accumulated drywall repair spend across 2 decades of homeownership, roughly $2,100 to $3,800 in labor for repairs that would have cost about $50 in materials if you had known the 8 tricks in this video. Nobody scammed you. The trade charges fair rates for the methods it was taught. The methods it was taught just take longer than the tricks it does not lead with on the estimate. What I almost did not include is the order I would work through these 8 tricks if I were trying to save the most time on the most common repairs. The order is not the order I taught them in, and it matters because some of the tricks compound in effect when you use them together. The high-impact order for most homeowners is trick 4 first, hot mud instead of lightweight spackle, for any repair that will bear stress or move with the wall. Trick 7 second, thin your compound before applying it, because that single technique change makes every other patch look professional. Trick 1 third, learn the California patch for any hole up to 6 inches, because that method eliminates most of the tape and mud steps a handyman would charge you full labor for. Trick 6 fourth, set up the vacuum pole sander combo before your next repair, because dust control affects whether your wife lets you do the next repair yourself or hires it out. Trick 5 fifth, learn the triple anchor screw pop fix, because nail pops are recurring problems, and the Pro Fix stops the recurring cycle. Trick 8 sixth, run the paint sheen test on every wall you repair, because otherwise the perfect patch still flashes under afternoon light. Tricks 2 and 3, baby wipes and plastic bag texture, are add-on refinements that make specific problem repairs cleaner, but do not change the core method. Concrete examples of the compound effect. In Cincinnati, Ohio, on a typical 4-inch outlet repair using the California patch plus thinned compound plus vacuum pole sander plus paint sheen test, the total repair takes about 45 minutes of active work, spread across an overnight cure, matches the wall texture and sheen invisibly, and costs about $8 in materials. In Austin, Texas, on the same repair using the traditional cut-a-square method with unthinned compound and no dust control, the same repair takes about 3 hours across 2 days, produces a visible sanding dust mess the entire house tolerates for a week, and costs about $250 through a handyman. Same hole, same finished quality if the tricks are followed correctly, roughly 6 times faster active work, 30 times cheaper in cash spend. The material physics does not care which method you use. The clock and the wallet definitely do. Pick 3 of these 8 tricks and use them on your next repair. Not all 8, 3. The right 3 for most homeowners are trick 4, hot mud, instead of lightweight spackle for any repair that has to hold. Trick 7, thin your compound to a peanut butter consistency before applying. Trick 8, run the paint sheen test on a hidden spot before you paint the repair. Lock those 3 in on your next patch job, and your results will look professional the first time you try, without any of the other 5 tricks. The other 5 are how you push the results from professional to invisible across the following repairs. The trade did not hide these from you. The trade charged fair labor rates for methods that took longer, and the tricks that saved time never made it onto the sales estimate because faster labor makes for smaller invoices. Whether you use the tricks is a question of one Saturday and $30 in materials at the home center. The knowledge is out there. It just does not travel through the estimate channel.